Welcome to Fear and Greed Sunday feature. I'm Michael Thompson. You might have heard me mention this before, but every week we release a sister podcast called How Do They Afford That? It features me and financial planner Canna Campbell. It's all about personal finance, managing money, investing, all that kind of thing. But the episode that we're featuring here today is a little bit different. We ask the question, is it time to quit your job? Whether it's from burnout or a lack of promotion opportunities or because the pay's not what you think it should be. We talked to our Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang, who, as a former CEO of an ASX-listed company, as well as an executive coach, he knows a thing or two about all of this. And it goes beyond when to leave. It's also a guide on how to improve conditions at your current job and then negotiate a better deal at your next role. So here it is. How do they afford that? It comes out every Wednesday in its own feed, wherever you listen to podcasts. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to How Do They Afford That, the podcast that peeks into the financial lives of everyday Australians. I'm Michael Thompson. I'm a writer and the co-host of the podcast Fear and Greed Business News. And as always, I'm joined in the studio by Canna Campbell, financial planner and founder of Sugar Mama TV, the financial literacy platform that is on YouTube and podcasts like this one, obviously, and books, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, every social media account imaginable. Good morning, Canna.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm going well. I'm very much looking forward to today's episode because we are doing something a little bit different. We have a surprise.
I'm excited. I feel like we're going to learn a lot today.
I suspect so as well. We are going to answer a question today that I reckon everyone has asked themselves at some point. Is it time to quit your job? And it might be because you're suffering from burnout, perhaps. There might be, I suppose, there's lots of reasons, really. Lack of career progression, kind of maybe you feel like you're not getting paid enough. But there are a few things that you need to do first. Things perhaps to improve your current situation. And if they don't work or you still want out, basically, some things that you can do to make sure that your next job is actually going to be an improvement. But, and this is a big but, because this is very exciting. For this topic, we need a little bit of help. This is not one that kind of you and I can do on our own. We have gone to our favourite expert on all things to do with careers, Adam Lang, who has quite a CV, it must be said. He's worked in senior roles across a bunch of businesses, including as the former CEO of Macquarie Media. He's now my colleague at Fear and Greed, as well as a CEO and executive coach and a bunch of other things. A very busy man, but we've managed to convince him to come into the studio for a little bit of time this morning. Good morning, Adam.
Hello, Michael.
Thank you for joining us.
I got invited back.
Yeah, that's
right. Stunning.
Because
Thank you for having me.
You have been in here before when we got into a topic that is still probably one of our most popular episodes that we've ever actually done. And that was on how to ask for a pay rise. And you gave us some really, really good tips on the preparation that you need to do before you go in and demand or request
More money.
More money. Exactly. And so today we're probably going to cover a little bit of that again today. But it's a broader question today of is it time to quit your job?
All right, I'm going to hit you up the first question. Does long-term loyalty actually exist anymore, or has the, workplace ecosystem changed where it's actually the intelligent, smart thing to do is, evolve and grow and move, as your career path does?
That's a great question. I don't think it does. So I know that is a blunt answer, but I think the only loyalty you can rely on is that to yourself. So, you should be the leader of your own career, the CEO of your own career, if you like, if we're talking in this context.
Oh, I like that.
And so if you become a leader of your own career, then from time to time you may find the team that is loyal to you and you are loyal to it and it works. But that can fall out of balance. And so I think it's a persistent question. It's one you should ask yourself all the time, rather than saying, hey, I'm here for life. And as long as I'm loyal to them, they'll be loyal to me.
Wow.
There's already some gems in that, isn't there? And maybe I'm framing this incorrectly as well when I'm saying that, is it time to quit your job? Because that's probably a little bit kind of, it's probably more a question of, have you kind of run out of progression opportunities? Kind of, and maybe this is actually the time to look at kind of some of those reasons why people do quit and what you can actually do to potentially fix the issues in your current role. Pay. Let's start with pay, because it's kind of, surely it is the big issue that would force people perhaps out of one role and into another. And it's probably that, I mean, surely when you go to Seek or one of the job websites, you are kind of doing a search based on salary to try and find something that's going to be an improvement. How do you go about increasing your pay at your current role?
So I think pay is really, to your point, Michael, the number one thing. And it's a capitalist society. We've decided the price is the mechanism in which we value demand and supply, right? So it's normal for pay to be the big thing. I think I would encourage everyone listening to this to think about pay over the short, medium and long term, not just today's pay for today's role. Yeah. And come back to some of the things we talked about in the last podcast was around how do you get a promotion? How do you look to your employer to talk more broadly about your whole employment relationship? Because that comes down to pay. And really, if you can look at your current employer to get the market value of what you do in your current role, and then maybe the next one or a different one, whichever one that you want, then that's the great way to have the conversation.
Because it's definitely easier, and I'm not trying to paint myself as lazy here, but it would certainly be easier to try and improve your current situation and to have that conversation with your employer at your current workplace about kind of what you're looking for in terms of pay than it is to kind of uproot everything and go and move somewhere else for. And there was some research out fairly recently that showed that people who moved jobs were doing it for a pay increase of about kind of 7%. Or so, which, I mean, that could be a fair increase depending on what you're on, but it's also a lot of kind of work and a lot of stress as well, because changing jobs is stressful. Surely you're better off to try and kind of have that conversation at your current workplace before you go, no, I'm out.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I think the fact is the stats don't lie, right? So there's this almost strange theme there that says an employer that doesn't know you might value you more than the employer you currently work for. And so why is that? So there's also an employer psychology behind that too, because sometimes you might value the unknown, the thing you think you need, and know less about them than you do the employees that you already have. So I think that's a two-sided question for both employers and employees.
Okay, so at this point, I would encourage anyone who hasn't heard the previous interview that we did with you, Adam, to just pause this episode.
Stop now.
Stop listening entirely.
Come back later.
Yeah, indeed. Go back and have a listen to that episode because we do step through it all. And you did a great job, Adam, of kind of going through how to prepare for that meeting and kind of go in kind of with the end in mind, what you want to get out of that meeting and even some of the language that you should use in that meeting with your employer so that it becomes a negotiation and almost an expression of your own value to the company, as opposed to just a demand for more money, which is, as we discussed last time, is probably not going to end well.
All right, on that point, how do you know when you've hit that earnings ceiling with your current employer and you just know that, no, I'm not going to get that pay rise and I'm not going to get that bonus? Like, I've milked everything I possibly can financially with this employer. How do you know?
So I think the only way to truly know is a great conversation. And so, Canna, you can imagine with people that you have worked for before, but running your own business, you've got many clients. And if a client of yours came to you and said, "Hey, I think we've run out of productivity here. We're not going to be valuable anymore." I would, if I was in your position, I would go, "What?"
I'm very upset.
Exactly. So you think, from an employer point of view, find out, because I think that's the only way to know if it is true that you've run out of potential with that particular employer. Is you've got to find out. And the only way that you can find out is by having a great conversation, because a great employer should want to keep high-performing members of their team who are accountable, get their job done, and are self-aware. Like, that makes you a great teammate. If you're accountable and you're self-aware. Now, it can be true that, hey, look, we're a podcast business. We don't have big space for numbers or different geographies. You know, we've kind of got a defined business model. Your businesses arguably have some of the same parameters. Every business has parameters on them, how big they are, where they exist. But you'll only ever know about what the employer is thinking if you ask and have a great conversation. So you may not know the businesses that they're thinking of acquiring or merging with, or geographies that they're going into, until you find out. But, you know, that can happen. And I think that's just righteous. If I was in an employment situation and someone in a podcast business said, "Look, I want to be an economist. Quite natural, profession to pick. Very, very popular from what I understand. But, if you went to us and said, well, look, we've got Stephen Koukoulis every week on Fear and Greed, but we don't need a full-time economist. I'm sorry, we're out of runway. Then you know that you've got to go somewhere else and deploy that skill. There are banks, there are financial institutions. And me being a good employer, I would say, I can help you do that. I can put you in contact with some people that maybe you should talk to. It may not be your next job, but it might get you closer to the next one. Because you should always be able, as an employer-employee, be able to look back and go, we did it as well as we could right until the point it finished. We all left proud. And so I think that's a good, healthy way to frame a conversation. Find out.
How do you approach it, though? Like, what's the leading question?
You can imagine I have no problem in chatting. So I would be probably, I'm okay at, I'm also 55 years old. I've been through a lot of these conversations. I was not always confident or assured enough to even have them. But, like this episode, I have written notes and ready for the things I want to say. I prepare. And so I've always done that. And that, I think, has held me in good stead. And I try to begin with the end in mind. As Michael said earlier.
You said that in our other episode.
Yeah.
Think of the end in mind. Yeah.
It is something of a mantra for everything to me, including life. How do I want to slide into the box at the end is, I want to be absolutely going to the grave knowing that I gave it everything, that I had a full, adventurous, balanced life. I was a good person. I was a good father, a good husband, a good partner in life. And so everything I do is bound around those really broad statements, and everyone can probably have their own version of that. But if I come back to it, whenever conversation I was having, difficult or otherwise, the more I can keep my end in mind is it's better to frame what I want to say in the right way in the moment, even when I felt much younger and under pressure and uncertain. So you can come at it with some really good motivations and good preparation to have the best conversation possible.
Okay. Now, everyone gets a little bit stale at time at work. I think it's natural, particularly at the end of the year. What does real burnout look like, though?
Oh, yeah, it's tough, and I think I've seen it in the mirror occasionally and had to recognise it through not just working hard, but probably the intensity of a period I'm going through or tasks that I've got all at once. And you can feel overwhelmed, and then you can get almost frozen or rigid into not being able to make even simple decisions, not being able to think clearly, and worry about almost the small things. So I think burnout is really personal. Everyone will feel it at different times in different ways. It involves personal and professional circumstances. It can involve everything. So I think you have to recognize it in yourself. And to know that, you have to know what well looks like. And then you have to know what when I'm upset looks like, regrettably, but you have to know those spaces.
Self-awareness.
It really is. It comes back to self-awareness and going, am I all right? Maybe I'm not. And to know that when you evaluate that position, when you're ready, if you're ready, it's not just okay to talk about it. It's the courageous thing to do.
Yeah.
Is to share it, ideally with a friend, a loved one, a professional.
A problem shared is a problem halved.
It will be. It will be. And talking to someone you trust about that is in itself an unburdening. It's okay. It's courageous and it helps.
So how then does that feed into the decision to leave a job, though? Because it doesn't feel like the kind of thing that you should make that decision when you are feeling kind of burnt out, because to be burnt out is quite a raw emotional state. And to leave a job is a big decision, and it doesn't feel like it's the kind of thing you should be making in that kind of state. Is this where you have the conversation with your boss and or your manager, your leader, or a colleague, someone who is able to kind of help guide you through it? And that is kind of when you go, all right, is this the right workplace for me to be in, or is this burnt out state my permanent state in this job, and do I need to leave?
So I think that there is kind of a little and often element to this. It's burnout is an extreme, right? You would suggest that there are steps along the way at which you're feeling progressively under pressure. And so being able to recognize those earlier is a good thing.
Yeah.
Even if you need to stop a conversation and, just when you recognize, okay, my heart rate's going up, I can sense the adrenaline here, I'm starting to not listen. Maybe I should stop because I'm either feeling under threat or under pressure or other forms of emotion. And so the more you can track your own sense of well-being in conversations day to day, the more you'll be able to sense, I'm not just okay in this moment, I'm not okay as a theme and what to do about it. So hopefully, the more you can let the pressure out in little moments along the way, the better off you'll be, the healthier you'll be. But if you do reach those extremes of feeling overwhelmed, burnt out, the best thing you can do is stop and just withdraw from a conversation and breathe, walk, do something to get out of that environment and recompose yourself, because saying things under pressure might not be the best platform to say what you want to say.
Okay. All right. And so really then that would be a long-term contributor, I suppose, to a decision to leave a role, then rather than kind of letting it just feed into a moment of kind of flipping the desk, walking out.
Before these things become themes, address them.
Yep. Okay.
Absolutely address them. And, that let's come to pay, in terms of if you feel you're not being fairly valued, okay, that's going to be a pressure conversation because it's hard to negotiate. It's even harder to negotiate on your own behalf, right? It's difficult and everyone feels sensitive about it. So what are you going to do then? Well, don't do that in the heat of the moment because it's almost putting yourself under even more pressure. So how can you prepare for that? And it's critical, I think, to get ready for that conversation and give yourself a better chance of being in that frame of mind when you go into the chat. And when you're having the chat, just know, hey, if I'm not okay, it's all right to stop.
Yeah.
It's better to stop than finish off with a bad conversation.
All right. So say you've been in a job then for a while, and we've kind of then talked about the potential for burnout and exhaustion and just kind of the job almost kind of wearing you down over a while. We've talked about earnings and pay and perhaps
it's almost like the top and the tail of reasons, right? You could be burnt out or just hoping for more.
Absolutely. And I want to talk then about kind of something else in there, and I think something that's really quite worthy in terms of career growth. What about if you feel like you're not, and I'm framing everything very negatively today, and I know, Canna, you've talked
to me. No, you? Skeptical?
I have a habit of kind of...
Grumpy?
Preparing for the worst?
Yes.
Doomsday.
Yep. And then anything that happens that is better than that, I'm like, oh, here we go. Everything's coming up, Michael.
Manage those expectations.
That's right. So in terms of career growth, if you're feeling like you're not getting opportunities for promotion, or you want to kind of increase your responsibility, but there doesn't appear to be those opportunities there, or kind of developing your skills, developing your knowledge, what can you do? And I'm asking you that question, Adam, knowing that the answer is probably going to be have a conversation about it, because it feels like a lot of this is me just kind of playing out worst case scenarios that can be resolved with a chat.
Yeah, it's like almost the value of those worst case scenarios and the self-chat can only yield something when you have a discussion.
Yeah.
Like, so all of that, if you think of it as preparation, and you, no doubt, Michael, you do a lot of that preparation, with lots of scenarios in mind.
Yep.
Use it, put it into a conversation with someone. And I think from that preparation, picturing at the end, you leaving that conversation feeling really content, really proud of how you've handled yourself, no matter what the circumstance. And so you can almost plot that line from preparation to leaving proud. And how do you go about having that conversation really effectively?
Because also you don't know what you don't know in terms of what, as you said before, what the company is planning, for instance. And the worst thing in the world would be to regret leaving, I think. If you were to pull the pin and go somewhere else, and then all of a sudden you see the company perhaps make an acquisition or kind of move into a new area, and you're like, I would have loved to have been working on that and to have kind of had an opportunity to kind of grow there. Or if you don't even have that conversation in the first place and just try and find out what potential opportunities, not just for more pay, because that is kind of part of it, but for your own kind of personal growth and your own professional growth and perhaps more training that might come from it. Just have the chat.
That's also true of the employer side, where they haven't known what an employee wanted.
Oh, yeah.
Like, someone's resigned and said, I'm going off to do this. Yeah, I wish I knew. We could have done that.
Yeah.
Or we could have done something like that. And so on an employer side too, think it's in their advantage, not just for you to have this chat, for them to have this chat as well. It's in both parties' interests.
That's a good point. I've never thought about it, but I have seen it actually happen where people have left and they've left and they're kind of good people, and you're like, oh, and then you see where they've gone to. we could have done that, but
Could
yeah,
have done better than that.
yeah, much better.
So we know that in this economic climate, with the cost of living and rising interest rates, most people are jumping ship purely just for money. But what do you see from your personal experience as being other reasons for people resigning and changing?
There's I think those who've managed to attract someone have clearly done something well, because I don't know that anyone really wants to leave just for a short time, just for money. They have to be leaving for a period of time knowing that their career and their short, medium and long term is in better hands somewhere else. So that says to me that a conversation probably didn't happen back at the existing employer, and that's on both sides to a point, but mostly the employer is responsible for that. And I think the employer is the custodian of the relationship. They're the one doling out the pay, so they should be doing this. But there's no doubt that money is important. As we said at the beginning, it is the single most important thing in this exchange. We are putting in effort and skills, and we are getting paid back. And that's helping us live our life, support our families, whatever it is that we want to do in life. So I think it's not just short-termism that's at play driving those moves. It's I'm taking this opportunity to get better paid because that's an immediate benefit, and I think the medium and longer term is better off there than here for whatever reasons are personal to them. So I think there's more to it than just that. I would say that too, even in environments of economic pressure, as that changes, like let's say, like some countries in the world, we're going through a recession, which we aren't at this point here in Australia. We've been very fortunate. So, COVID was incredible. Lockdowns were incredible. The employment circumstance was very, very different in that time. And now it's still different later. Hybrid working from home, etc. Like you can change employer just by logging on to a different account. You don't have to change your journey to work anymore. You don't have to drive, find a car park, work out your commute, childcare arrangements or caring arrangements, whatever they might be. So it's really easy. And I think that COVID and lockdown impact was a step change in just how fluid our roles can be in moving to different employers. So I think that's more or less going to be a theme that's ongoing, not just under economic pressure, but all times. So we'll see. You can almost click to a different employer now rather than go through all the rigmarole that you might have had to in a purely physical working environment. So I think that is something that employers and employees must recognise about the competitive landscape. That's how easy it is now. So I think that's likely to continue. So what's more important then? Okay, if I can do it hybrid, say 3 days a week, just to take an example, Monday and Friday, I've got to go into the office. Where is that? Yep, got to think about that. Do I get charged more in tolls and parking fees or travel than the benefit? Because that can add up a lot, right? So, headline pay is really important, but so are all the conditions on getting to and from work. Then you look at the work itself. Is it important to me? Those hours every week, that significant block of hours that we all commit to any employer, is that important and meaningful? So I think you've got to look at really that last one is the most important, because that's the most time you're spending in that meaningful exchange of skills, labour and pay.
So assuming I have now decided to leave my job, Adam,
just for example, Michael.
Just for example, obviously not leaving this one, obviously, because I very much enjoy it. But assuming that I have decided to leave, there are a bunch of considerations and a bunch of things that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
And I am very, very interested to see, because I've never been quite clear on how people go about lining up their next job while they've already got one. And it all feels a little bit sneaky at times. So
cloak and dagger.
Yes, indeed. We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to get into the sneaky side. Canna, we're talking today about, is it time to quit your job? And we've covered so far some really kind of valid reasons for why you should have a conversation with your employer. And of course, we have some assistance in the studio today. We're being helped by Adam Lang, who is my colleague at Fear and Greed, a former boss of mine, former CEO of Macquarie Media. He's a CEO and executive coach now as well. So he's very well kind of credentialed for this, has had probably plenty of these kinds of conversations with people. And so far, we've really kind of talked then about some of those reasons why you might feel it is time to move on, whether it is pay, whether it's kind of burnout, whether it's you've exhausted the opportunities perhaps for career progression and for expansion of your own kind of professional skills and knowledge, and you've decided that it is time to start looking for something else. How do you actually do that? Actually, no. Should you line up another job, Adam, before you quit your current job? It feels as though you're already nodding even before I finish the question.
That's a hard yes.
Okay, all right. Because otherwise,
now, look, there are exceptions. You might have won the lottery.
Okay.
That trust fund you never knew about might have
You
kicked
may have
in.
manifested it.
You may have had an enormous result in manifesting March. Those things can happen.
It happens.
And to give you lifelong freedom from the need to work. But failing those things, yes, it's a hard yes, because I think the pressure, the emotional pressure, the confidence impact, the lack of money coming in, the lack of certainty of when you'll change that situation, unemployment is difficult.
Yeah.
Really difficult and stressful. So my opinion is I don't want that stress, right? I would feel really uncomfortable coping with that stress. So I would always want my next job before I left my present one.
And it would look better to a potential employee.
I think that's right. Yeah. I think that's, and again, that's bizarre in a way, because you look at it and go, hey, look at my current employees, and employers are showing, as we talked about, the 7% differential, right? You know, you can get 7% more pay if you move. Why? You know, because that's on employers and employees, because why does an employer who doesn't know you value you more than your existing employer? That's a bit odd, right?
Yeah.
But similarly, you know, what is it that you need to know to get your next job? And to me, if someone was looking at me being productive, active in the market, knowing people, that is different than someone being unemployed. So employers' perception tends to be that employed people are more appealing than unemployed. And that is not fair, but just over time, that seems to be a perception.
Okay.
All right. How do you logistically find a new job when you're currently in one? Like do you organise early morning meetings? Do you sneak out? Say, I've got a dentist appointment.
Are you working at your desk with the Seek window minimized on your desktop? I would love to see some stats from Seek as to the hours that people are actually searching on Seek, and to see whether they are doing it kind of before and after work, or they're actually doing it kind of at about 9:30 in the morning when they've just gone, oh, you know what? Jumping online, I'm having a bit of a browse.
So how do you do it? Look, yes, you do look at Seek, you know, but I would encourage you to do that in your own time on your own devices.
Okay, excellent.
For fairly obvious reasons. But the other approach is use your current job in all of its facilities to search beyond your existing role. So if you're at a company that's got some size, different departments, what are the internal networking opportunities that you have, right? Because you might have said, actually, I really want to work in sales or finance or marketing or something, you know, so find out more, connect with those people that are outside your role. Even if you don't want to connect with them for an employment opportunity, you'll be a better teammate knowing those people better, right? So do that. Use your existing role to connect with more people in the company that you work with. Use your existing role to connect more with the clients that you work with, the suppliers, the partners, your electricity provider, your real estate, cleaners, whomever it is. You never know what conversations will take you in your next direction, right? So I think just being open to that, being good, being kind, you know, being strong and getting on with people really well serves itself. Now, so beyond the internal role, there are also typically in industries associations that might allow your company to say, hey, we want you to be part of this industry association in the environment, on governance, on social welfare, whatever it might be. Use those forums to get to know others in your industry, other companies, other connections, other roles. So you can do a lot from within your existing employer, including looking at Seek while you're at home. So, you know, there's that. But I guess too, look at exhibitions, summits, because there are events perhaps that your employer is willing to pay for you to go to learn about different aspects of your industry that are also great networking opportunities. So you can meet some terrific leaders in that who present, talk to them, Usually they love being talked with, Kenny, you've done heaps of keynotes.
Yeah. I
do
love
people come and talk to you?
Love it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you feel good about that, right?
Absolutely.
You have good conversations.
And you have such meaningful conversations as well. And it is 100% approach someone that if they ignite something within you, get in front of them, because you never know who they may know, as you said. You've got to open yourself up to the flow of money, but also employment opportunities.
Maybe it's a form of manifestation, right? Just having conversations
now
like
we're
that.
talking business.
So,
Did you just recruit Adam Lang to your cult?
no, I've been long recruiting.
Yeah,
I'm a listener.
I did. Adam manifests.
Got matching tattoos here. It's not so deliberate as going out there and just kind of saying, hey, you've got a job for me. It is more just about building
It
those.
can be, but there are
generally-
other approaches.
More
Generally,
subtle, professional.
it's that
approaches.
relationship building, and it
Yes.
is kind of just establishing yourself as a person who has ability, who has the confidence to get out there and to do that, and just to make yourself known, so that perhaps on an occasion when something does come up, that you might get a call.
Of course. So, look, if you're using a sporting analogy, there are times when, say, if it's soccer, football, right? The ball's at your feet, your eyes have to be down on that ball. But there are other times where you got to lift your eyes up and read the play of the whole ground, like where you're going to kick it to. So it's that eyes down, eyes up aspect of doing your job and looking at the play and seeing where can I fit in here. So use the company's facilities, use the perhaps even exhibitions, summits, conferences. The company may be even willing to pay for your ticket to go to those for your own professional development. They are a great opportunity to meet people. And so you tend to broaden your circles out and your connection points. And also just, it's a great checking mechanism to go, you know what, I really like that person, or I like hearing about that industry. Follow your curiosity, go with that and see where it takes you. There's one other thing I should suggest, Michael, of course, and this is why
Oh, dear.
you're guilty.
Uh-oh.
I'm guilty. Sean Aylmer is guilty. We built this podcast called Fear and Greed just for this. If you do not know about a business and other businesses, listen to it. We tell you about what's going on in the world of business, and some of those things might go, I want to do that, or I want to know more about that. It really helps you rake over all those different industries you might have heard of but know nothing about. So use podcasts, use the newspaper. Canna's podcasts are excellent. There is, aside from just this one, this is a good way to think about what you want to do in life. So really do just use that curiosity internally, externally, and try and draw that out to where you want to go next.
Can I ask one last question? Just because you said something that really intrigued me. You said, follow that curiosity. What if you're in a current role and things are good? You can't complain. You're happy. And you meet someone, say, at a networking event. Is it bad to say, look, I might be interested in something further down the track, or let's stay in touch? Like, what are your thoughts of where you're in the comfort zone, but you also do need to keep in mind, okay, well, what are my next career path for next year and the year after that? Like, how do you navigate that professionally and respectfully?
So I think it's fine to have that conversation if you feel comfortable doing so. I'd say if I ever came across it, I'm happy where I am. I'm already qualifying it in the way I've said it. It's like, I'm happy, but, it's like I would try to be more direct.
Okay.
And say, I'm enjoying these parts of my role. I'm looking for this. And really just see what that reaction, or see what reaction you get to that, because that person might absolutely respond well and say, actually, this is someone you could talk to, or have you seen X, or have you read about Y, to really further that interest. They also may say nothing, in which case you've got your answer. So you're basically, I think, if you're okay where you are, just ask yourself, is that all right in the circumstances? Because it might be, you might have, hey, I'm all right where I am, but I know that my life's in balance. I'm looking after my kids. I'm looking after my parents. My life's in balance. It's good for now. But you might know longer term, 5 years, 10 years maybe, that you're interested in something else. And that's good to talk about what might interest you. What's the spark you're looking for.
Yeah. So plant those seeds, they may come to fruition further down the track.
Yeah, I believe in that because it that's natural and good.
Okay.
At what point should you actually tell your current employer that you have got another offer? should you do it once you've already accepted it, or should you perhaps give them an opportunity to respond to that? Again, I'd ask questions, and you can just, Adam, your body language.
Not a poker player.
No, you have got a terrible poker face. Just like your facial expressions when I say these things tell me exactly what the answer is. So I'm guessing I should probably have a conversation prior to accepting another offer.
Yes, I think so. But I was actually smiling because I'm going to give the most horrible answer, and that is, it depends. Because
I'm not expecting that.
Yeah, it does depend. Now, let's just say you've got an awesome working relationship with your boss, the person that ultimately you're going to be resigning to. Then in theory, they should know about where you want your career to grow. They should have been helping you grow in the role, support your development and career. And so when you bring that to them, it's likely to have been, at the end of a bunch of conversations said, I've been approached, I've got an offer, I'm actually thinking about taking it, right? And so if you've got a trusting and good relationship with your employer, your boss, that's natural.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just say you don't, or you haven't begun that, and, look, I've just been given a job offer. You might be in something that you don't want to be part of anymore.
Yeah.
And so you just take it, accept it, and it's a ticket out of the place you don't want to be. And so you just inform them, right? But that's not going to be looked upon by either of you probably as the best possible exit. You didn't give them a chance to respond, but maybe you had your answer anyway. I said, look, it's been great, but I got to go, and it's short, sharp, and move on. So in a way, I think the best thing to do is not accept a role until you've had a discussion with your existing employer. I've done that every time in my mature years. So, that's been a good thing, and I've always left well. So I think the answer is 90% of the time, always tell your employer. But there may be some other circumstances where you just don't have that relationship with your boss, and definitively that you're not in the right place and you want to be somewhere else.
And then if you do go to that other place, how then do you frame that conversation from the beginning in order to avoid kind of just trying to iron out a few of the challenges that you might have had in your previous role?
Yeah.
I'm imagining that it is the best thing to do is to get it all out there from the beginning, kind of what your expectations are.
Your terms and conditions.
Well, yeah, what you are hoping to gain from the role. And because obviously you're not going to go there unless it is actually an improvement. Right?
Completely right. And so, look, I think most companies have given us an advantage this century, and that is they typically have a purpose, values, behaviours. They've got statements about who they are, what they do, why they do it. And so you can frame not only the reason you accepted your job, but where you want to go within that company from the beginning in a language they understand. So you can really frame that conversation in the company's language, something that they're used to and will respond well to. So begin with the end in mind. Frame the conversation.
Yep.
Be really clear on what the goals of your role are. Like, what am I here to do? I understand you're investing X in me.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it's a remuneration, some of it's a desk, the power, the air conditioning, the facilities we have, the environment we create. So I get it. It's salary plus is what you're investing in me. And for that, I've got to do X.
Mm-hmm.
How do I do that really well? Make sure you're telling me what the goals are. Make sure you're telling me what I'm doing well and what I need to improve.
Yep.
And so you know that you're accountable to those goals, and so do they. And they know that you're a team player, and so do you.
One question without notice, Adam. Does it drive you nuts when...
In general?
No, does it drive you nuts when people do not, or potential employers do not put salary ranges on job ads?
Yeah, I don't think that's right. I think it's wrong.
It's because surely that is very unhelpful for people to kind of have these kind of conversations with their current workplaces. If they, in order to kind of know what their worth is and what like a similar role is elsewhere, that they, in order to actually find that out, they have to go through the whole interview process and then kind of get to that point. There feels like there's a big kind of push get back against that kind of, because we've been heading in that direction for a while now, where you open up a newspaper and look in the classifieds. Goodness me, how old am I,
Michael?
Yes, and the job ads and things. There are salary ranges on about kind of 10% of jobs.
I wonder if it's a kind of a horrible anachronism to when it was indiscreet to talk about money. I'd like to think that time has passed. I think it is honest and direct and gets you both to a more meaningful point more quickly.
Yeah.
So this is the salary range: low, medium, high experience. That's what we can offer between X and Y for low, medium, and high experience in this role.
Yep.
That filters out a lot of time and a lot of energy that doesn't need to be spent that way.
Yeah. Makes the whole process a lot more efficient.
I think it's
right?
honest. It's absolutely honest and direct. In fact, I'd be, looking at an employer, if they didn't tell me that, I'd be like, well, I'm not bothering.
What's that kind of gatekeeper theory?
Right.
You can't get to that information until you've jumped through all these hoops of fire. And then I might give you that little bit of information.
Deign to tell you something.
Yeah, it's probably a good point then that is the kind of employer that you want to be working for. Anyway, that kind of question just occurred to me because that you often
It's been frustrating you.
Well, no, not me personally, but
As you read the newspaper.
Goodness me, not used to being the one that's copying it from Adam. Usually on our weekend edition, it's the other way around, isn't it?
Not normally the one giving it.
On Fear and Greed. Anyway, now, we usually finish this with a savings hack every episode. And I know as a frequent listener of the podcast, you will have heard our savings tips, our savings hacks. And I know you're a big fan of using the word hacks to describe them. Normally, it would be between Canna or myself.
Yeah.
This week,
I'm the lucky one.
it's all on
Yes.
you.
Okay. So, very normal public transport. I used to think that I needed a second car. We still have one. We've got a son coming through who's nearly about to get his P plates, and so that will be a car. But let's say 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I probably would have said, we need a third or something, some other arrangement. But you know what? Public transport with apps is so good. You can tell when the bus is coming. You can tell when the trains are. I feel much better about not putting another car on the road and putting more stuff into the atmosphere.
And it can work while you're
being driven, right? You can listen freely to podcasts. You can do some work. I actually really believe in the benefit of public transport. So I defer to that much more often, and it can save you a stack of money. The cars, insurance, fueling them, maintaining them, it's a big cost. So if you're looking to change, your financial landscape, consider that.
And on the weekend, the rate's
So cheap.
So cheap. You can pretty much use it as many times as you like in the one day.
Did you just hijack Adam's savings hack for your own?
Complimented, I think, is the word you're looking for.
Or even enhanced.
Wow.
Bonused it.
Goodness me.
Thank you, Kenna, for bonusing my savings hack.
I think it's very valuable because no one does talk about this. It is savvy.
I'm into it. I like it.
I just realised that we are way, way, way over time, and I haven't even kind of given a summary of what we talked about. I'm giving myself 30 seconds to summarise everything that we've just covered in 45 minutes. That basically, you can do it in one line, and that line was one that you used early on, Adam, and that is that your only loyalty is to yourself. And I think that is really, really powerful.
I think it's brutally helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Because in the end, that kind of answers that question of whether anybody does a job for life anymore. Kind of, is your loyalty to your employer, or is it to yourself? Is it to your family? Is it to kind of really that this then feeds into all those ideas and all those reasons that we talked about why people potentially leave their jobs, whether it's kind of pay or whether it's your earnings potential has kind
or
of
your manager
exhausted. Yeah. And kind of whether you are burning out, whether you are having kind of a limit imposed on you, whether it's self-imposed or externally, on kind of your career growth and your opportunities for kind of professional expansion that we talked about, obviously, that you can kind of rectify a lot of that potentially just with a good, straightforward conversation with your boss where you are representing yourself, you're representing your own interests, and often you can actually make those interests align with the interests of the company. And that is kind of when you hit that sweet spot of being able to kind of get a result that benefits both of you. And if you're not able to do that, or if you just want to change and you want to kind of move on, we talked then about obviously the things that you need to consider when you are looking elsewhere, actually making sure that what is being offered is an improvement on what you've had, and also then how to find those opportunities. And it's not just kind of browsing on Seek while you're supposed to be doing your job, that it is kind of a longer term play. It is kind of networking. It's getting to know people and putting yourself out there and positioning yourself as a candidate. That there might not be a job available now, but who knows, next year, the year after, 5 years' time, 10 years' time, kind of down the track, that you might be the person that someone calls because you've put yourself out there and you've had those conversations and you've established yourself. That wasn't 30 seconds at all, was it?
Follow your curiosity.
My God, he's just coming out with all these gems today. Just Adam Lang. Only loyalty is to yourself. Be the CEO of your own career. Follow your curiosity. I think that actually sums it up perfectly. Thank you for coming in today, Adam.
Well, a real pleasure. I hope it's been of use to people listening.
It certainly has.
Definitely.
That was Adam Lang. Canna, thank you. And where can we find you if we need more help?
Fastest place to get in contact with me is through Instagram at SugarMamaTV.
And you can hear me every day with Sean Aylmer on Fear and Greed, Australia's best business podcast. And if you want to hear more of Adam, you can hear him on the weekend edition of Fear and Greed, where he is the adjudicator in a very competitive environment. It's a lot of fun. Thank you very much for listening to How Do They Afford That? Remember to hit follow on the podcast. Please leave us a review as well, and perhaps a 5-star rating if you're feeling particularly generous. Next week, we are talking about childcare. It is very, very expensive. We're looking at basically how it all works and how you can make it fit into your budget. It is an important issue. Don't miss it.